Hey there, guys. How's it going today? In this episode today, I'll be discussing sustainability in our geeky interests. Alright, so this episode is also going to be a podcast episode. It is going to be available on the YouTube and on the Geek Guys or EDH Geeks podcast. I am mainly talking about EDH mostly, but yeah, this can apply to all kinds of different games and different things that we play. Like, the thing is, we all know the facts of, the issues that we face with, the global warming and the pollution issues and whatnot that we have in our world right now. And, sustainability and finding ways to, reduce our carbon footprint, have less waste, all this sort of stuff. I think it's important to start having a, proper discussion about, like, this sort of stuff and, like, how we can start, like, because Wizards has been, trialing things and whatnot here and there, not very super successfully and not, consistent and whatnot as what perhaps we might you would want. But again, they have done some things to try to account for some of the issues of their product and whatnot. So it's always going to be one of those things, like, because again, we all play with cardboard rectangles. Cardboard is made from trees, and for those, cardboard rectangles to be made, people have got to cut down trees. Now, that's one of those things, like, we could, like, one of these things that I've heard people say is that we could move to a different material of the cards, and whatnot. I'm not opposed to it per se, and I don't know how many people would be opposed to it if it was a cleaner, greener, more efficient option, and it did the same job, in a sense as the current materials that we are using. So like, again, it's one of those feasibility things that Wizards perhaps has to do, and this is the thing that maybe we have to start reaching out to Wizards and start saying, hey, look, we really like this product, we really like this game, but we would like to see it be much more sustainable, much more economically and eco-friendly and whatnot and all that sort of stuff. So it is a big task, and it is sort of on all of us to make sure we're keeping this in mind. How can we get our game, no matter what it is, like if we're playing just the PlayStation or Xbox or Nintendo Switch or whatever, how is the best way we can, keep our carbon footprint low? Because it is a real concern, and some people want to go and, do different things and, augment their footprint and things like this. So it is a, legitimate thing to think about and to discuss and to find tips and tricks and whatnot that we can start doing to, live a bit greener and live a bit more healthy and live a bit less plastic free and, pollution free and whatnot. Because again, even though we're gamers and we're nerds and whatnot, we still go outside. We still consume food from this earth. We still consume liquids and water and whatnot from this earth. So, to me, just saying, oh, well, we can live without it, I don't really think we can, or we could live without it. But then again, like, we really can't. We've already seen what 1 year of just living inside our houses has done to almost everyone. So, like, it's obvious to me that, it was even obvious to me a few years ago, but I really want to start making some of these conversations start happening because they're really, really important. Now, I want to start coming out with some tips and some tricks, and maybe you guys can suggest some little things here and there, but I am mainly talking about EDH, as I said, but for the most part. But again, like, if you guys say, here's a tip, if you want to, live greener or do this or do that, like I'll put it in. I'll like put things in the description. I'll put things, like, and again, this is one of those things where I was thinking about some of the charities that are out there, some of the, or not exactly charities, but some of the active groups that are out there, like Clean Up the Ocean and places like that, or groups like that are just like, they're out there, they're trying to clean up the ocean and whatnot, and there's all these other groups that are trying to save the rainforest. There are people that are trying to, replant trees and things like this. There are people that are trying to clean up our world from pollution, try to get rid of all the cigarette butts, try to get, turtles to not have to choke on plastic bottles and things like this. The recycling industry, again, like, this is one of those things about, I know some people would think it's a bit sacrilege, but like recycling old magic cards, like, and I'm not talking about super old magic cards to a degree, but I am talking about like older like magic cards. There's so many magic cards out there, especially like just vanilla nothings essentially, or even just like vanilla one keyword nothings for the most part, that are out there that just don't do anything for anyone. Realistically, they're not valuable for the most part, like, at all, like, unless you're a real like set collector or whatnot. But then again, it's just one of those things. Do you really want to have this 5 mana, 5/5 that has no text other than, it's a creature and, it has 5 power and 5 toughness, whatever? Like a lot of those cards, I think, we could go out and go, right, well, no one needs these cards. Why don't we recycle them? No one's ever going to need these cards. Like, and if they do, like, well, what's going on? Like, you don't need a vanilla nothing, for a deck, because it just doesn't do anything. Like, so what's the point of it, existing for the most part? Like, so you might as well take those cards and say, all right, cool, no one is really going to want these. Let's recycle them, or let's do something else with them. They don't have to become magic cards again, but they could become something else entirely as well. But again, if we find other materials, again, like I think somebody said that, they could, they recycled a whole bunch of things from old plastic ink cartridges and things like this, and they made their have made cards out of recycled ink cartridges and things like this, plastic ink cartridges. They do the same thing for roads and things like this, and whatnot. So again, there's lots of little options, and we need to start thinking about like exploring it more and more within ourselves. Like, again, sleeves are one of those things that, I've bought many sleeves over the years. A lot of the time when I don't need some of the extra sleeves, or some of the older somewhat sleeves that I have, or some of the sleeves that aren't quite as durable or as good as some of the sleeves that I've bought, in the last few years, like Dragon Shield and whatnot, or Katanas and whatever. Like, I've just decided, well, if somebody else needs these sleeves or wants these sleeves, they can have free access to them, because, I'm not using them. So that's another way of recycling. And, like, I'm not going to go through every single thing here, or too much here, but again, I do think it's important to, like, it gives back to the community, which is one of those things that is helpful. It helps somebody who might be a newer player being like, oh, I want to get into Magic or into EDH or whatever. Especially, I love that when I can find somebody who's like just looking to sleeve their EDH deck, but they don't have enough money for sleeves, and I'm just like, here, like, have these old sleeves that I've, had, whatnot. I don't have too many anymore, but still, like, before I would have, old sleeves and whatnot, and just be like, oh, okay, I'll give you these sleeves. You can sleeve up your deck. They're still pretty good. They're just not good enough for what I want, because, I've got better sleeves, or whatnot, and I've got more expensive cards and whatnot, so I want to actually, really protect my cards. But these will do a decent enough job just to get you started and get you playing and, whatnot, that sort of thing. So, I think that is great as well. Like, I know a lot. I've sort of said this in one other video where I sort of said, like, if somebody's around and they, are newer, that some people will give them free cards and things like this just to help them get into EDH or into Magic or whatnot. Things like this, especially like commons and uncommons, that are just like 30 cents, 50 cents, whatever. Like a lot of people will do that, or even like 30 to 40 cent rares or whatever, even dollar rares or whatever. Sometimes people will just give away some of those cards, be like, here you go, like, here's something to help you start getting along. I know that's not exactly the same thing as like recycling exactly, but it is helpful to somebody else in that regard in a similar way, because again, they don't have to go out of their way now to buy sleeves right here, right now. So they're not adding to the, waste issues and whatnot of, like having to buy sleeves right now. Maybe they will have to buy them later on, sure, but again, like, it might give them that start that they need, and they even might pass those sleeves on to another person, and another person might get them, and so on and so forth. So it really helps out quite a bit. Even if it helps one person out, it can be really good. Same thing with cards. Again, it might save that person from having to crack a pack or whatever to get this one random common or uncommon that they really need for their deck, or whatnot. Or like, or it might save them having to, dig through several boxes to find it or whatnot. Things like that. So it just helps somebody out. And no, it's not exactly, again, the same thing as saving in recycling, but it is reusing cards that perhaps wouldn't get as much use as what they would do if somebody, has, free and ready access to them, because it's like, well, what are you doing with that card? You could sell it for nothing, or you can give it to somebody that might need it, like, again, there's little things that are like that. Same with gaming. Like, that's why I, think, a lot of us, when we see secondhand games, will pick them up, because, again, it's one of those things. It's recycling in a sense of saying, well, I will just save these from being, destroyed, put into landfill or whatnot. I will keep using them and keep having fun with them, and whatnot. I will give them, a longer lifespan, a longer shelf life or whatnot. And that will mean that, again, that the product is, more worthwhile and lasts longer than what its, intended theoretical shelf life was. So that can help with, like, those things that are, made from, materials that are, perhaps more long lasting, like petroleums and plastics and things like that. They do usually last long. It's usually just the electronics or some of the other components that get, corrupted or whatnot, and things like that cause games to fail and you not being able to play them, or damage or whatnot, things like this. But again, like, there's all sorts of little things. So if I keep that game going longer than its intended shelf life was, the, intended, degrading of the materials might not be there as much either. Again, still, because again, plastic takes, 10,000 years or whatever to biodegrade or whatever. But again, that's given, the hardware, the software, the electronics, even more time to, again, be still relevant and useful to somebody. So that's another, way of sort of semi-recycling. It's not exactly, it's sort of, I don't know, sort of shared cycling. I don't know. Like, it's always useful when you get something from somebody else in this regard. It's like the same with op shops and things like this. If you find some old shoes or whatnot that are still fairly decent shoes, or whatnot, you can reuse them. That is, giving them an extra shelf life, essentially, extra usability and things like that. So there's all those little things that are out there that we can start considering and start looking at. And again, as I sort of said, we can start looking at lowering our carbon footprint, or finding ways to get net neutral with our carbon footprint and things like this. Plant trees, start a garden or whatnot, or different things like that. There's always things that we can do, and there's always options. As long as we're around, we have the power to change our world for the better. Perhaps the world sometimes would be a bit better off, without us sometimes. But, like, the age of enlightenment has come, I think, in the last, few years, certainly. And people are starting to realize, well, we can actually, do something about this now that we, know about it, and we can, see what we can actually do, not just, well, there's not really much we can do about it, like the problem is too big, or it's, the problem doesn't have a real answer or whatnot right now. I don't think that was always the case, though, but I do think that there was a lot of other issues around it. But I still think that people perhaps, even now, I think a lot of people aren't convinced that this whole thing is an issue and whatnot. But even if you don't believe global warming is a real thing, or whatnot, you can at least believe that pollution isn't good, or whatnot. Like, you can see that pollution hurts animals, it hurts the ocean, it hurts, us, therefore, by it hurting, those ecosystems and whatnot. Do you want to go into a pool and have a whole bunch of cigarette butts and plastic and debris and all this other stuff in there? I don't think so. I don't think that sounds like a very good time, so you can see where it's like, ugh, that just sounds very icky. And if I was actually meant to try to live in this, how would I do it? And then you're like, oh, yes, well, this is how, fish or turtles or whatnot must feel or whatnot, or must, go through, because this is the thing that they actually have to deal with, and whatnot, or frogs or whatnot, and lizards and things like this. That's what they actually have to deal with. They actually have to live with these things that, us silly humans have gone and done, and put into their environment, and whatnot. So, again, and it's just one of those things. You think about the future of, people and whatnot. Will our children and our children's children and their children's children be able to go into the rivers and swim and frolic and whatnot and all of this? Will they be able to fish up some fish and eat them and and all this, without having to eat a whole bunch of plastic or cigarette butts or whatnot, or oil or whatever else? That doesn't sound very appetizing. Will they be able to breathe the air and things like this? Will they not be able to go outside as easily because there's acid rain, all this other stuff? So, or will they not be able to go outside because the weather conditions are so, jumbled up and mixed up because of global warming, and, the rising sea levels mean that, less areas are inhabitable and all this other stuff. So again, even, taking away anything else, you just look at some of the things that you can see right in front of you, and you can see, yes, that doesn't seem to be, very good. But anyway, as I say, it is one of those things that I think most people are enlightened to. And I think one of those things is, I sort of read this the other day, as somebody was saying, we have the, power of, more power in our iPhones than what they had going to the moon on, the first moon mission. You have the Library of Alexandria essentially in your hands. All knowledge basically is available to you in this, maybe 6-inch device, whatever. So, that's just, one of those ridiculous things. And, not, ignorance is sort of one of those things where if you're ignorant in this day and age, it's sort of more of a choice than, a symptom of not having access to knowledge, because again, you've got access to almost all the knowledge in human history right in the palm of your hand, basically. And yeah, it's one of those things, like, if you choose to not learn and grow and develop and actually expand your mind. Now, there are some things that are out there that are a little bit like catching and whatnot. They sort of present themselves as news, and some people can be fooled by some of those things. But if you do your research and whatnot, and I know not everyone has the time to do all the research, but like, again, just a little bit of research sometimes really helps you find what is real and what is not real, and whatnot. You can, even if you just find conflicting opinions or conflicting sources, you start being like, well, I don't really know what to believe. And that's sometimes a little bit hard too, because there is a lot of misinformation out there as well. But still, again, it's one of those things. If we don't sort of do something about the conditions that we're in, and that's what I always want to get back to the point of. It's not going out and protesting. In my opinion, protesting really doesn't do very much. I want to get out and actually plant trees, or actually find ways we can get around the issues that we face. Like, at some point, yes, protesting, does help with litigation and some of that other stuff, and does show, or whatnot, getting signatures and this sort of stuff does help with some of this stuff, saying, hey, look, so many thousands or hundreds of people, really agree or disagree with this, particular thing. And like when they protested to stop, some dammings and things like that years ago and things like this, they stopped a lot of, environmental issues happening because of those damming things and whatnot, things like that. And like heritage, like listings and things like this or whatnot, or, cultural significant sites and things like this, they stopped them being destroyed or whatnot. Again, it is a conversation here that we're having today, but as I said, we've got to take those actions and those steps. We can't just talk about them. We've actually got to go, okay, cool. Now we've got some ideas, some tips, some tricks, what we can do, how we can do these sorts of things. Now we've got to start enacting them. So hopefully, we start to get onto that path, because I really wanted to start doing that. And I've started doing some of that sort of stuff where I've started planting vegetables and things like that, because again, it's one of those things. It's just fairly nice to sort of have that going on. Plus, it's sort of, also has other benefits and whatnot just inherently throughout this whole thing. And as I said, we can do anything we want to do, with what we have. We have the tools, the technology, and all the things now to really change our direction. So hopefully, guys, this isn't too preachy or whatnot. I don't want it to be, but hopefully you guys can see what I'm trying to get at, and we can start having this conversation and start making some action and start making some strides towards making our world a bit happier and a bit healthier and whatnot. So I hope you all guys have enjoyed this and found it interesting, and whatnot. Some of my thoughts perhaps, might be useful to you in some of your pursuits of some of this stuff, and whatnot. So hope that it has been. And you can let me know your thoughts. Write them down in the comments below if you're on YouTube. I'll be sure to try to respond to all comments. I really enjoy talking with you guys, interacting, and talking about the things that we love, all these geeky things. So yeah, I'll be sure to see you down there in the comments below or in the next one. Hey, you've just finished watching one of our videos. A bunch of other videos are popping up on your screen now for you to check out, so why not check them out?